If you start your journey in the Christian community as a little child, one of the very first things that you learn as a little child is a very simple 3-word truth. God is love, right? I mean, I can remember, and I still think it's one of the best songs, and I hope Jen's taking notes on this. So Jen, I'll remind you tomorrow morning when she's in the room here. Oh, she's here. But I still think one of the best songs that children can learn is that great little song growing up I learned. What is it? Jesus loves me. This I know, for the Bible tells me so, right? I mean, that is such a simple song, but it teaches such a central truth to what it means to experience God. Jesus loves me. Now, it's interesting, though, that as much as we may know that this is a central truth to the teaching of the Bible, that this is a central truth to what we call the gospel, the good news about Jesus, that God is love, and that we need to know the love of God. I would argue with you that having this in our head does not necessarily mean that we live it out in our heart. In fact, it has been said the longest distance in the world is that 1 foot between our head and our heart. I find that it's actually, to be honest with you, I think really hard for a lot of us to live from the inside out this truth that we should be rooted in the love of God. That should be our centering reality. That should be the foundation, the platform that we do everything from, the love of God. I was actually reading about revivals just recently. You know what revivals are? Revivals are, throughout Christian history, there would be times in which in certain regions and areas throughout the world, Christians would be gripped with the presence of God. In the midst of being gripped with that sort of, overwhelming sense of the presence of God, other people get invited into it, and other people are literally overwhelmed with the presence of God. Now, if you're a bit of a Christian historian, you can read about different revivals that have happened literally throughout the centuries. But a famous one that happened just over 100 years ago was over across the pond in Wales, and it was known as the Welsh Revival. And apparently, between the years of just 1904 to 1906, 150,000 people came to Christ during that time. Literally, every church, get a load of this, every church in that region, in that area of Wales, was filled every night. Churches would be packed. People wanted to come. They didn't count their time. They didn't, say, well, it's 7:30. I better get out of here. Meetings were going on for 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours, as people were just overwhelmed with the presence of God. Well, during one of these meetings, it was recorded that this woman by the name of Annie Davis stood up and started to sing a Welsh hymn. And this hymn goes like this. It's called "Here is Love, Vast as an Ocean." And at the time when she sang that hymn, just sort of spontaneously, while people were sharing what Christ had done in their life, how change had come in their life, everybody sort of resonated with and started singing with her that "Here is love, vast as an ocean." Do you know that hymn? Let me just read the first verse for it. "Here is love, vast as an ocean, loving kindness as a flood. When the Prince of Life, my ransom, shed for me his precious blood. Who his love will not remember? Who can cease to sing his praise? He shall never be forgotten through heaven's everlasting days." Now, if you want to, feel free to go on YouTube, type that in, "Here is Love, Vast as an Ocean." Matt Redman has a beautiful rendition of it, okay? Now, the Welsh Revival, though, teaches us something, because actually that song, "Here's Love, Vast as an Ocean," became what was known as the revival song during the rest of that time that event was taking place. They sang it everywhere. And I can't help but think that when a revival is going on, what's really happening is people just aren't sensing the presence of God. or just the holiness of God, or the truth of God, or the hope of God, but ultimately they're sensing why Annie sang this song. Here is love. Here is the love of God, vast as an ocean. And that is what is going to root us and anchor us in this life and the life to come.